One of the things that we've overlooked in the Epstein files is that while the DOJ is flagrantly in violation of federal law, there is a ton of stuff out there, and there's a lot of fake stuff being generated to take advantage of what is and it is not being released. Okay, so you got like 3.5 million pages. Nobody's going to go through that, all right? But two tech gurus did. They figured out a shortcut, a way that any of you can get on the computer and search through what looks like Jeffrey Epstein's personal email account as if you were him. Now, they call it Jmail instead of Gmail. It's got 150 million users so far. So, you know, I don't really want to talk about how they did it because I'm not going to understand half of what they say. But what is in there and why they did it matters. One of the creators, Luke Eigel, joins me now. Luke, did I say your last name right, first of all?
Yeah, that's how you say it.
Good. First of all, good for you, man. I love to be this young and have this kind of success, and for the right reasons. Good for you. You give me hope for the next generation. Now, why did you do this?
Well, I've been interested in the case for a long time. I was just entering my sophomore year at MIT when the whole scandal really broke out, August of 2019. Tons of professors I really looked up to were involved in whatever sort of ways I think the initial blowback that happened. And when that batch that came out from the House Oversight Committee in November, saw a lot of friends poking through it, very difficult set of scanned PDFs of emails. And I immediately thought of my really good friend, Riley, who made a lot of projects kind of similar to this. So I convinced him. He said no initially. Then he was like, we have to do this. Then the next day, we spent about 5 hours, got the first version out.
So what it works as is it looks like Gmail, basically, and you have it all categorized. How does somebody use it? If they want to find out, for instance, well, what was this about? Was this about just massages or something else? Or what was really going on with girls? What do you do? How do you use it?
Well, very recently, we have the sidebar that allows you to cluster by different topics. So there are a lot of names that a lot of people likely haven't heard of. Jean-Luc Brunel is a good example. You can just click on many of these different shortcuts and then find a lot of these emails organized by a few of the well-known things that are here. Someone who's on the larger team that has joined us also made this really cool page called JWiki, where it just compiles the tens and hundreds of thousands of emails across the entire data set and then shows you, here's every single time that person X visited with this man, and here's what there is to know about them. So we've created like 100 different places for you to get started.
What have you learned? If someone to ask you now, help me understand, what is this about? What was Epstein doing that was so bad? And why is there a need to know who else was involved? Like, what do you think it was about?
Well, when I was in college, all that people really talked about was that there was a lot of influence peddling. This bad guy was always hanging out at MIT and Harvard, and those two institutions shouldn't have let him there. And I think what the public is now talking about is the fact that there was this larger international sex trafficking ring where a lot of well-known people may have even had knowledge of and may have been involved in it. That is what I think most people are interested in when they hear about all this. But then there are, of course, some people where the mere association with this guy is newsworthy, even if there's zero reason to believe that they interacted with him beyond that.
Now, in terms of what is fair for people to focus on, somebody knowing him, wanting to go there because there are going to be other big names and maybe you'll get some deal flow, maybe you'll make some contacts. I think that that's probably something we should only expose if that person did that with knowledge that this guy was about trafficking young women. Just hanging out with him isn't necessarily a sin unless you're hanging out with someone that you know is a scumbag, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are leaning on that explanation themselves. I think one of the first things we found was just this really crazy exchange with this other guy named Al Seckel. This is back when the House announced those first 20,000 emails that Riley and I initially made this thing for, where he's extensively working with this guy who calls himself a search engine optimization expert to clean up Jeffrey Epstein's Wikipedia, to clean up Jeffrey Epstein's Google results. And whoever is staffing in the House did a really good job showing screenshots of what Google looked like when you looked up this guy in 2010. And even then, it was really bad. Like it was very clear why Jeffrey Epstein was spending tons of money to get these strange figures to come out of nowhere and help him clean up his presence.
What do you think needs to come out that hasn't?
I think a lot has been spoken about by Congress people about all of the video data that has clearly been seized from his properties that is just not here. I think we are currently at about 300 gigabytes that the Department of Justice released. Tons of reporting says that about 18 terabytes was taken from his estates, which means about 98% of the data that belongs to this person has not been announced. I think everyone knows what this is kind of hinting at, right? I have no idea. I've asked a few of the journalists who have sourced a lot of data to us what they think is missing, and I'm not really an expert on it, but I know Congress people have said there's much more.
Do you have the ability or the inclination to do something much more advanced analytically, which is if you're concerned about whether or not people knew, here's what we can find in what's been released that indicates that certain people seem to suggest that they knew what was going on. And here it is. And in terms of what was going on, here's what we found that shows what kinds of behavior this was. Here's sexual behavior. Here's financial behavior, you know, because Prince Andrew just got busted for trade secrets, not for what he did to Virginia Giuffre. Do you think you have the ability to do that? And if you have the ability, do you have the inclination?
I think we did. Someone on our team, her name is Melissa Du. She did an amazing job leading the whole wiki project, where she uses pretty much every technology that is now available to us to go through these millions of pages of documents and to do that really hard, deep research where, you know, hundreds of hours of investigative work that would usually be done manually is now there. We now have a page where very famous figures. We have a good, well-sourced list of every single visit that we know that they made to every single property, every single claim that they've made in public that is contradicted by the contents of Jmail, and then a nice little link where you can click. And then if you believe that one of our models is hallucinating, then you click it and you'll see if we're right or wrong. And we've already done a lot of that fact checking ourselves. So we're pretty excited about that.
That's JWiki.
Yeah, that it came out a few days ago.
Are you laughing at me? Are you laughing at me?
No, I'm laughing because of how silly the name is and how silly the whole situation is.
Well, I wish it were silly. Here's why I can't let it go. Because as you know, especially your generation, you guys are so keenly aware of something my generation wasn't. The fight is not right-left. It's top-bottom. It's that this system picks winners and losers. And we are looking at the people who were picked to win. And a lot of them didn't deserve to win. And that's why I love that you're giving people the ability to see why the interest in this can't wane. It's not a nothing burger. And it's not, well, there's no major felony, so it's fine. So thank you for the work. As you make advances that you believe is not being echoed in the coverage, let me know, because there's a really good chance you will see things I don't.
Appreciate that.
I appreciate you, young man. Luke, thank you so much. Thank the team. If they ever all want to come on and get some shine, look me up.
Let's do it.
4 minutes and 30 seconds. Jmail and JWiki, okay? I'm telling you, I spent about look, sometimes when I do these interviews, I have to, it's not pretending. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.